Okay, so that's get us going. All right, now I'd like to welcome Ed Cazalet from the Cazalet Group, who's going to give us his keynote presentation on transactive energy. And I'm going to let him explain the concept in more detail. But Ed and I had a conversation on a flight back from Tech, and he explained this concept to me in that very confined space for a couple of hours. And I said, you know, we really need to take this message out there and tell more people about it and have people argue. Now, I will say this with a caution. Please be careful in arguing with Ed. He has all the facts. And I'm not kidding. He has all the facts. All right. So with that, we'll welcome Ed.
I think I'll start with the slide because this is a tough one. We're talking about a very simple subject, electricity. We all know what it is. We use it every day. And the purpose of my talk is use it to be an advocate as a consumer, for all consumers, for a better way of delivering electricity, cleaner, greener, less expensive, more reliable. So we all know where electricity comes from. And back in these performance going to the bottom, smart one, talk about that. And we've all heard of smart meters. And some people hate it and some people love it. And I want you to go away from this lecture in order to understand that smart meter what they mean to our state, our country, if we teach it. So we need advocates for the proper use of the all installed, all ready to go. In almost all of our homes, it's time to start using them the way they're designed to be. How many of you have been bothered to download the smart meter data from PG&E? It's very easy to do. It's on my meter. It shows the usage of the day every 15 minutes. I learned a lot about it a couple of days ago. One day, PG&E is going to give you that meter data instantly, so you what you did 5 or 10 minutes ago. That sounds, but for now, this is pretty good. Is that help you leave the lights turn down a little bit? But basically, you can see when you got up in the morning, when you went to bed at night, and what happens to the activity during the day. And now, other than being interested, you can't do much with that right. Typically, the price is the same all day long. You might earn maybe the person, if the price is all the same all day long, you still pay the shipping you use. We won't be talking about how much each area, but the rest of the grid, if in some cases you have automatically put and adjust their use, not you, moving quickly by far more important buildings than something about than just the scale. There's also a little thing down in the corner with James Mark talking about leadership we talk about later in the discussion. The green button. The new thing coming on the standard that will let you down with leader. Next one. So the grid is a very, very interesting and complicated thing. Down the bottom, over the corner here, we have the customer. That's you. That's electricity coming out of the wall socket. Right? Yellow lines show you how electricity got to you. First, it comes from you may have a local generation source, a solar panel, or perhaps some people might have small wind. But as you go back to the grid, there's a distribution. The distribution grid is the wires you see running down the street to your house. Sometimes you run it. Go back one more step. After you go to a substation, the higher voltage is transmission grid. Transmission grid is a big power you can have around the day or throughout. Eventually, you come back, all generation, these are large power, sometimes cycles, sometimes running on natural gas, sometimes remote wind farm, solar farm. And so the power is, when you flip the switch, something has to change back in the generation side. Generate that electricity. It's amazing it works. Pretty much all the time. Now, the history of the system is all of this, both the generation transmissions, all used to be owned by one local company, PG&E here, all vertically integrated. And control functions, which is blue, would come from the central operating center, say at PG&E, control the dam, the generators, and the switching and transmission grid, and distribution to different power, try and match their forecast and what you use. Now, because the federal only regulatory commission, Congress, state, we've been trying to, as we've done with many other industries like airlines, natural gas, trucking, will always be regulated, and trying to open that up for competition. And so we created markets. Now today, the distribution and transmission is all regulated. And the common carrier, just like common carriers we use for all our long-distance telephone calls for a long time. And now, so in some states you can buy, customers can buy their electricity from any source they choose and use those wires to them. You choose to have green power. You choose to have brown power. You choose to have more power or less power. So, and that we moved partially in that direction in California. Now, that's created market. Also created independent circuit types. You can provide power with a circuit. So the industry is evolving. In the 80s, Congress has decided to create something called smart grid. Really just making what we have really smart and use information technology developed here in Silicon Valley and other places to better manage the grid of customers to put on the grid the way they get what they want. When you get down inside the customer, it's quite complicated. You have the home, the data, that the various devices implying the home. Similarly for buildings and commercial and mechanical, that the scale of it is an idea of the device on the other side of it. For the industrial, there's the bigger devices, same kind of neighboring issues. In the middle, we have this thing called an electric vehicle. Electric vehicle, today, you can decide when to charge it. And you can charge it at a peak. That saves you money. But sometimes if you charge it a long time, you have a problem with it. That kind of thing. Electric vehicle time also has a battery for power. That's another. So there's a lot going on the consumer side, interacting with large service providers that we need to do. And one way to do that is to say, let the utility company turn on, charge your car, and turn on the energy. Fine. You want choice on business. Transaction price. Now, that's a series of problems, challenges. Here's how to deal with. One of the challenges is later than this curve, where we've sorted all of the hours of the year, so the hours is amount of load and generation required on the system to the lowest. And you see that there's some hours of the year that's all needing, say, 17,000 megawatts. 17 very large power plants. The other part of the year, maybe it is 48,000 gigawatts. 45 of those. Then we need additional reserves on that. And this only serves what's known as California Independent System Operator. With additional power in the Los Angeles Department of Water Resources. So what's the range? So in the power case, if the power plant I only use 2 hours a year, it's very hard. If you can help manage that code and reduce that investment, this saves us money on the transition code, the other side, when the energy is very low, particularly now that we have a large amount of food, sun may be shining, the wind may be blowing. We've got no place to put power. So if you can find ways that power today is on control for the next price. Pay to take that power. So if you start on pay, just those other parts, but those only being that those power not have choice. So that's kind of the view. So we're going to a very large grid station in solar. 50% of our average energy coming from wind, solar, geothermal, but it's not 33% of the energy. That's a much larger fraction of that. That's the average load. That's actually like a 33%. I mean, there'll be times on the grid where the only thing running are the wind and solar. It's not running. Nothing else, for example. And within that, we have another problem. The wind is different every day. You can't take the wind tomorrow based on the. But typically in California, the wind doesn't blow based on the blows at night. The sun is very shiny during the day. We have both in the solar. They're very nice to come. And in the day when it's so there's still a problem. Because the problem comes up. And so this drop off, many things, and all that looks like we find quickly to keep the load rate called ground. So we have a problem dealing with there. they can use it to help with that. To help with that problem. They put more solar. They keep more alive. Same thing happens at night. If the sun drops down, okay, but the wind comes up before the sun. The sun goes down. And we get to take. What do we do that? So it's very in every day the pattern is. When we look closely at what comes out of the solar panels, like even the system we have on the campus, that system ought to be on every parking lot that we have. Big cars, just outstanding the technology. This is what it look like for a system. So how do we do it? We have generators sitting around with half of that. We still get the power back in 21. So we get all our devices, industrial, commercial, residential, kind of just slightly. It's still comfortable. That's how it works. Then we put it with the solar on the grid. Now, there's another problem. This is advocating coalition. That is the best place to put our solar panels. Not parking lot, not a desert. Not the desert. Then we got to put three times from up to here. Well, that means this is a picture of if you go all those transmission lines, the price of our transmission component of our grid will go up. But then it turns out people don't build the solar panels up. Then they build the service. Right? We've wasted all that money. So the key thing is we want the street policy of our stuff. We want 12,000 big most important camp here is the first example of how we do it. We do a valley of big LA and not build on those types of first. I would say this money is if the actual cost of our transmission will go down because using the existing lines that are all paid and save the transmission out. The same thing is true of operator distribution. Excellent. There's another problem called the Los Altos Hills problem. Okay, somebody told us that guy with a Tesla. Tesla, if you charge it fully, if you charge it 4 hours, they accept it in the total hours. There are many other cars. Suppose you've got a 50 kilowatt transformer on your cul-de-sac. Okay, you're fine. Then your neighbors use your nice Tesla goes buy one of his own. Okay, we all buy one. Well, already you're over the 50 kilowatts of grid if you all want to charge at the same time. Then you've got air conditioners and some other uses of power. And you've got some sources of power like solar in your backyard and top of the rooftop. So what do? We build giant transformers in there. Every place we need to stay. We all have to want to charge at the same time. So how can we coordinate the neighborhood? So everybody gets to charge when they need. Okay, so don't charge when they don't. Save money and order. And there's a way to do that by the way of process of that. The way to do transactions among the parties on that grid. This is typically in a residential area. The load, say you're leaving, everybody comes home and turns on their air conditioning, plasma TVs, and what have you. But the maximum generation of okay. In fact, some areas like 2020, there's a requirement that all new buildings must be net zero energy. Okay, so that doesn't mean that they don't consume it. It's just that some parts of the day, some parts of the day, increases. So happy. zero, at least over the season. What that means to the utility is sometimes they're absorbing power from us, sometimes they're sending. But then they don't get any net revenue. You bought as much as you sold. How are we going to organize the pricing of the grid service? So we still have that kind of storage battery being provided by utility. Maybe to get properly compensated. Don't get compensated any more than is necessary, so they don't overbuild the system, but because we're misusing it ourselves. So there are all these challenges. There are more. Today, if you look at your bill, you have the first block of power you buy might cost you 15 cents a kilowatt hour. The next block will cost you about 28 cents, and about 33. And right now, so you have about 3 active blocks. So the curves on this graph show you the brown, the blue, and the red, 3 blocks of power. Now, most large users are already up in the top rung anyway. We have some special rates down the bottom that are very low, called care rates, which are for qualified low-income people that don't pay these high prices. Of course, the customers are paying that to higher prices on our bill. But the problem is the legislature decided that the bottom tier of our rates will essentially be fixed. But anytime PG&E or any of the utilities have cost increases, it's got to be allocated to the upper tiers. So if you're up in Kern County or Fresno or whatever, it's the middle of the summer, okay, you're paying a lot of money for that top tier. And so that's what happened a couple of years ago. Kern County was the rate revolt because the prices got so high, because all the places we put on them, they're big users because they have that air conditioning. So the PUC is up in the legislature essentially says, okay, we'll get rid of the top tier and bring it down. That's not going to solve the problem for projections of PG and others. We're going to be back in that same situation a few years from now because costs are increasing and all get allocated to the big users. Now, the big users have an alternative. They put on solar panels. And then we don't have anybody to allocate that cost to. So what are we going to do? That's as PG&E say, unsustainable. These are rates not created by PG&E, created by the legislature, thinking they're doing politically good things to help out the poor people and help out the people who have more of those big users who have many of them. But it screws up our system. Okay? In the same way, the system back in 2000 collapsed because the legislature put price caps on what retail price could be. When the wholesale price went up above the retail price, companies like PG&E and Southern California had many bankruptcy, nearly many bankruptcy, because of a silly rate design created for us by our legislature. Okay? So, PG and others are asking us for this to be fixed. Let's make sure it doesn't get fixed in the wrong way this time. It's fixed in a way that's sustainable, not only for us, but for our utilities and our generators and everybody else. Good. This curve shows you the magnitude of the problem, where small users cost 25 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour to serve them. For large users, it costs 15 cents. Black curve shows you what we're paying as the total amount we consume in a given month. So the difference is about a $600 billion subsidy from one group to the other. And people can avoid that by putting solar panels on and putting those generators on, and then where are we? We put all those generators in, and then we don't have anybody to pay the subsidy, so it's bankruptcy. Now, there's hope. There's been studies all over the country about the effect of price on customers' use of electricity. There's 2 curves here. One curve, the bottom curve, bottom axis says the peak to off-peak price ratio. That's the price on the peak of the day to the price on the peak of the night. And it starts out at 1, goes up to 2, 3, 4, up to perhaps 20. And the vertical curve is the percent of the load usage you have during the peak times of the year, the middle of the day, that is reduced because of your actions to reduce the usage. The lower curve says just by knowing the price is high during that period of time, people reduce. This is studies all over the country, many studies done by professionals, independent, not utility propaganda, okay? Serious researchers. This is a proven fact. People respond to higher prices. If you put in technology like a smart thermostat, I described that a minute ago, that sort of thing automatically responds when the price is high and shifts. So reduces the use of electricity when prices are high, increases when prices are low, you get a better response, and that's top curve. Again, this is science, not conjecture. And so we need to move forward with this in California, make use of the smart meters we have, the technology we have to implement this for our system. Well, the technology to do this is here. It's here. This is a smart thermostat. We provide those for hardware stores for $99. It's got this Wi-Fi in it. Technology is a San Francisco company. The chips are made here in Silicon Valley by a company named Marvell. You can hook it up and hook the free service to hook it up to the web. It's a free service and a free download of an iPhone app or any other app, so you can remotely control your thermostat. But all that technology is affordable today. What we don't have is any kind of pricing. It says when is a good idea not to use it. Good ideas because the prices are flat. Typically the same price every day, every hour of the day. So the cost of power has a number of components. The 19% is the cost of your energy. That's just the fuel cost behind the running the generators to deliver your power. The next pie, about another 19%, that's the cost of building the generators. Now, as we get more and more wind generators, solar generators on the grid, that cost is going to go up, the cost of fuel goes down. Next two pie charts are the transmission and distribution costs. Part of the transmission costs. The rest are the other part of the distribution costs. So it turns out about half of the cost is on the wholesale side, that is the transmission and generation. The other half of the cost is on distribution. A big portion of the cost are all these wires and services that things have locally. And all of these have limitations. We have to price each of those in a way that we can serve use. So when that transformer in Los Altos Hills is a beautiful building, we want to charge the people who are not using power more at that time. Pay the people who are not using the rebate for not using the power at that time. No net revenue to the customer. It's the same pricing principle now used for parking meters in San Francisco, where the parking meters are set up so that in the neighborhood, the prices of parking is the same. And they always raise and lower the price of at least two parking spaces available. Marvelous system. Very simple. The same system you use when you go buy theater tickets. You try and pay. The Giants will raise the price on popular games and lower the price on less popular games. The stands are almost always full. Same for airline tickets. Airlines are always full. Everybody gets to fly when they want to. We give them the price they pay. So tremendous efficiency, tremendous savings. And the power industry is the only industry where we don't use those techniques to help customers manage their use in a way that's compatible with the grid. So what we have to do then is to align the utility and customer transactions and prices. So that when the utility is making a longer-term investment, we're signing contracts that are agreeing to pay them for a period of time. When the utility is buying something for the next 5 minutes at a price, we ought to pay at least that price for the power they're using. And that way, everything will work together to reduce the risk on the utility for buying things that we might use, we eventually pay for ourselves anyway, and reduce our risk of not having power when we need it, just like parking space always needs available in San Francisco. When we need one, we're willing to pay for it. So the kind of prices alternatives we have for this smart grid and flat price, and that's what we have right now. As I pointed out, there's increasing block rates. The price goes up and really loose, but basically everybody's in the top flat price most of the time anyway. The second alternative is what's called time of use price, which is we say it's going to be lower price off peak and a little higher price during the peak days of the day. And that difference is set to encourage people to conserve. And that's a move in the right direction. There's a variation of that which is called critical peak pricing, which is on the highest and difficult days of the year, the price goes up even further. That's moving in the right direction. But the problem is, it doesn't really help us when the wind suddenly stops and the sun stops shining. We're asking you to just do something different for 5 or 10 minutes. So it can help with this peak problem because we have not enough generation for the highest time of year. But it really doesn't solve the problem of integrating many huge amounts of wind and solar on a very efficient way. We can go to what's known as real-time pricing, and having the price change every 15 minutes. And that's very effective in getting you to do the right thing. But the problem with that is that's all you do, and the utility is making long-term investments for you, and you can decide every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes whether you use that or not. And that puts them in a precarious situation because you might decide to walk in and put in your solar system or other things and leave them with stranded investment. So we have to align, they need to know that you put in a long-term investment in solar panels, and so they won't build generators instead of your solar panels. And they also need to work with them to pay for the storage that they're essentially provide to you by taking solar panel when you got too much power, taking that and returning to you when you need it. So those transactions have to go through. So the solution is what I call transactive subscriptions, which is combined both long-term transactions and short-term dynamic prices. The long-term transactions, essentially, it's so the subscription is essentially just like any other thing you might subscribe for an amount of power over time. And you're obligated to take that amount of power and pay for it. And that gives certainty with the utilities. They can make the investment. And you only want to contract for it in times you're actually likely to use it. And then when it comes down to actually operating your devices, running your home, running your air conditioner, okay, if you don't use all of the power you consume, you get to sell it back at the current variable price. And that price may be very high, you make a fortune. It may be very low, and you lose on it. But if it's very low, you're selling it back any time when nobody else wants it. The price is very high. Somebody wants it more than you do. The same. So you can get a credit or a debit, depending how you use it compared to what you contract. That's exactly the way transactions are done on the wholesale market. So this aligns the retail market transaction with the wholesale market transaction, reduce the risk to our utilities, so therefore they can pass that on to us through the regulatory process. It makes it a simple system. Now, in the past we couldn't do this. Couldn't do it because we didn't have the ability to measure power at 15-minute intervals. And we didn't have an opportunity like the internet to communicate prices. And we didn't have the smart thermostat. other such devices to make the decision for you, so you don't have to think about it. So you imagine next time you buy your new dishwasher, okay, there's a button on it, you say, I want to do my dishes overnight, press the button, you figure out the cheapest time during the night to run the dishwasher. And that's when the wind is low. And when you have an electric car, you say, I want it in 5 hours, and you find out the cheapest times to charge that car. That might be in the middle of the day when there's excess solar power, it might be in the middle of the night, whatever. All of this will work together to create a very efficient. So what these transactive subscriptions do is they're an obligation to both parties, buying and selling. They got an obligation to deliver at that price. You've got an obligation to pay for it at that price. You can still have the low price subscriptions for the care customers, the low income customers, so it doesn't change that political decision. Full incentives to respond to scarcity and abundance. Risk off. Lower cost and more renewables and improved reliability. When it comes to expanding to more competition, because you can take these subscriptions unbundled, and when you leave PG&E and go to another supplier in competition, you can take part of what you already bought from them and move it over into a new transaction. Okay, so I might say I'll take some power from PG&E, and then I'll supplement it with some green power, and that'll create a smoother ramp, for PG&E and utilities, rather than saying, okay, everybody's leaving. How do we handle that problem of stranded costs? And so, really, if we can get our legislature to begin to think in some of these terms, the best way to avoid another California rate price, which is, according to PG&E and many others, is on its way. So, going beyond that, the vision of transactive energy is you have at the top many different customers. You've got various retail markets. You've got wholesale markets. Basically, the vision is ultimately any party can sell or buy its power to any other party when they want to, as long as the two parties agree on the price and the time of other terms. And with that, I think we can realize competition in the industry. We'll have much more innovation. And just like in Silicon Valley, when we have iPhones and everything else, innovation is the speed of light. Innovation just doesn't happen very fast in the utility industry because utilities have to go to a rate commission, get approval. Their investments are typically 15 or 30 years. And so they've got to make sure that it's tested and proven, and that's what makes innovation is very different. But if we can move more of the decisions into the customer domain, it's so coordinated, and then we get innovation like that was good for us in California, and it's especially good for Silicon Valley. And the students and others are coming along here, so we can do that innovation at the pace of Silicon Valley, not at the pace of regulation. And so to make this happen, we need your help. There are many people who don't think smart meters are a good idea. We need people to understand that smart meters, properly used and properly pricing electricity, can really help achieve our goals. So it's really up to the customer to participate in the process politically, regulatory, and with students, and that sort of thing, to move in this direction so we make good use of this technology for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll take some questions for Ed, and then we're going to have a short networking break, and then we'll have the panel discussion. So if people want to ask a question, they can come up to the microphone, and maybe this was before the coffee that we had supposed to have. Maybe at break time and during the panel discussion, we'll give you an opportunity. We have a question here. Can you please identify yourself?
Sure, my name is Jack Ellis. Ed, you talked about some of the obstacles, the regulatory obstacles and the political obstacles. Why is it so hard to overcome them?
Hard question. Well, I think part of it is apathy. There are a few people who go to the Public Utilities Commission meetings and others who whip up a storm that the smart meters have been heard of because they're getting damaged by this particular rate plan. So the people, Silicon Valley and people, educated people who understand, don't get involved in the process. That's a part of it. I think there's tradition. Utilities don't lead in this way because they wait for the regulators, the legislature, to tell them what to do. They have no incentive to lead because if they do, they're hung out to dry if something goes wrong. But if the regulator and legislature tells them what to do, they make money all the time. So those things have got to be changed. We got to have more competition, more innovation. How do we change the legislature around? Which I think is key. Up to us. We got to educate our local representatives. Only take the team. The legislation that got us in this trouble was typically led by one or two senators, and they didn't understand. The legislation that got us in trouble in the year 2000 was led by a senator from Los Angeles whose previous claim to fame was producing the movie Return of Killer Tomatoes. That's what he knew about the system. So, I don't know. Other people may have better ideas than I do to change it. Yes.
Hi, Paul Denig from Panasonic. It's a two-part question. What is the smallest size customer? In other words, would you need to aggregate customers in order for them to make transactions? And the second part is, what do you see as the first domino to fall to allow people to begin trading energy in this transactive process?
Okay, I don't think there's any minimum size. I think the right way to do it is many, many small transactions. The transactions we do here are very small in volume compared to what's done in Wall Street every day. If you look at the transactions to buy and sell stock, in a single day there'll be billions of transactions done on a single computer server. The round-trip transaction time is microseconds. So there's no need for aggregation. The aggregation will happen naturally through the system. You don't need intermediate aggregators, I feel. Now, in terms of, what was the second question?
The second part was, what do you see as the first domino to fall? What regulation or governmental organization would need to give their blessing for this to take to move forward?
I think there's the Public Utilities Commission will have a representative of the PUC up here shortly. I think they can take some leadership, and the commissioners can take some leadership under existing legislation to introduce some of these pricing policies and tariffs to the extent that the current legislation allows. They don't want to do it because they're afraid they'll get criticized. Be criticized by the consumer representatives and others who, frankly, we'll hear one of the leading consumer representatives up here shortly. They have a different point of view on this. So we need to move forward with that and get some of these on a voluntary basis, have people start working this way. And once people see it, once people work with it, then I think we can make progress. Ultimately, the legislature needs to make some decisions, or else it's going to cost us an awful lot more money.
Warner Northworks and Stanford University. I want to ask you about the potential for the service providers on one of your early view graphs to be a significant change agent in this system, in the sense that they can provide equipment and complex knowledge to setting up something that would enable the consumer to take advantage of time of use pricing without going through a lot of hassle setting it up. You use the example of dishwasher. Put a switch on the dishwasher that sets it up so that the dishwasher runs at night unless the customer wants to override that and do a load during the day. Now, if my dishwasher repairman knew how to do that, I would call him up and I would find it very easy to say, give me that switch and I'll pay you a modest fee. Now, for my dishwasher, I'm not sure whether it would save enough to incentivize me, but it certainly might incentivize somebody who's building lots of houses or somebody who routinely replaces dishwashers. Now, let me give you an example that's bigger. There's a large swimming pool in Foothill College. There are a lot of swimming pools around this area of California. Supposing the filter was run at night, how much money could be saved? And could you get the people that maintain and service swimming pools to provide the same kind of opportunity? Set my system up so that more of the filtering is done at night, during, and not in the middle of the day. Might there not be a large saving there? And might not you be able to use the swimming pool service organizations in order to accomplish that?
I couldn't agree with you more. And service providers will do a lot of this. But step one is getting the prices right. There will be no incentive when you've got flat prices. You can just plain time of use prices. But if you've got the extremely volatile prices that average to a lower price, that you can take advantage, so you can profit by putting in the switches, putting in the controls. Yes, the dishwasher is not that big a load, okay? But the air conditioner in Kern County is a big load. And if they can pre-cool, and avoid using it, just let the temperature rise just a little bit in the middle of the day because they're going to cut their air conditioning bill in half, that gets interesting to me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Queenie Van Buren, and I'm working with a startup company, and we're going to be doing energy management system for small residential homes and small commercial buildings. I think a lot of your ideas is very good. I just want to find out, right now, does the utility already provide automation, the way to automate the pricing, variable pricing setting with consumers? That's number one question. And another question I want to ask is that for the subscription price, would every customer get a different subscription price depending on how much they are using, or would that be a fixed price for everyone?
Excellent question. So to the first question, does PG&E provide dynamic pricing services and that sort of thing? Not yet. That's what we'd like to see happen. And I don't think they're against it. They just need we consumers to request it. And to request that of our public utility commissions and others. So I don't think there's any reluctance on their part to provide that. It's just they need to hear from customers. See, the second question was on the subscriptions. Are they different for everybody? So if a customer buys exactly the same amount of power with exactly the same shape, they'll all pay the same price. But if you're up in Kern County and you want to buy a subscription with a lot of summer peak power, or you're down here and you don't have much air conditioning, okay, your set of prices for the total subscriptions would be different, but underlying that would be exactly the same cost for a given amount of power in a given hour of the year. Okay?
Alan Gartner with Enter Technologies. Ed, it seems to me that there's most of the demand response, that is the price responsive load, is coming from a very small number of customers, less than 8% of the load at all. And all of this stuff focuses on residential loads, which have been the worst performing as far as responsive loads. Isn't there some way to apply this to commercial and industrial customers first rather than go with the political problems with applying it to residential?
Well, it should be applied to all sectors. And you're correct that most of the response has been in non-residential areas. So I give examples because I'm speaking to consumers of things like dishwashers and air conditioners. But the air conditioners in the big buildings, that sort of thing, are even more important. The water pumps we use to move our water around are even more important when we manage those properly. So yes, we should have this kind of system for all users. Now, if you decide not to respond to prices because it's too expensive, then you're not going to benefit directly from the system. But those who are managing their load, because they have the ability to do that, and they're making profits, going to lower your rates as well as everybody else. Now, this system, we've got the smart meters installed. Okay, it's an accounting change, basically, to say how we price electricity. It costs almost nothing to implement the system of smart meters in place, so we might as well make it ubiquitous and make it opt-out for customers. If they don't want to do it, they can still pay a flat rate, but that flat rate will be higher because it costs much more to serve for people with flat rates than it does with variable rates. My thoughts. Yes.
I'm Steve Farragher. I'm the publisher of Baker Street Publishing and an old friend of Ed's. Einstein said that insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result. I've been involved in this issue of load management for as long as I can remember. And what we're hearing today, we heard 20, 30 years ago. So I'm sitting asking myself, if we just keep doing this, we're just going to keep getting the same thing. I mean, Ed says he doesn't know what's going to change. But there is one way of accomplishing some change that seems to work, and that is to create pilot experiments. And I don't think the regulators are very good at doing experiments. Industry does test marketing and all these other things when they're not sure if big moves are going to work. So they seem to behave as though we've got to do everything all at once, and that's too risky, so we better not do anything. So I'd suggest that they start thinking about doing some pilots, like make this area of Silicon Valley an experiment or something, and let these crazy people do whatever they can do, but something like that. So pilots is one idea that I think has some promise. The other thing you may know about is the redistricting of the voter districts in California. Now, I can't think of any public problem, that would be more challenging than redistricting voting. Can you imagine? I mean, what the legislatures for 100 years just did redistricting however they found redistricting to be to their wishes. But within the last year, a different organizational structure was set up in California, and in fact, the redistricting has happened. We have new voter districts in California. How many people knew that? Yeah, good for you. I mean, this is big, and it happened. But what it required was an experiment, a different organizational structure, and it worked. So anyway, I hope in the next 20 or 30 years, sometime we'll do some of this. Thanks, Ed.
Sure. Right. Well, okay. Thanks. The politics of this need new approaches, I agree.
Okay, so the question online from Karthik Krishna is, what would be the main challenges related to integrating legacy systems?
Well, you know, I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of legacy in this industry. So we have existing transmission, distribution, generation, and that sort of thing. And I don't see any challenge with integrating the legacy systems because all we're talking about is a transaction and price layer. Those systems are what they are. They cost what they cost. If we get a more efficient system, we may retire some of those early or make better use of those legacy systems in different ways that will help us accommodate more renewables. So I don't think there's any barriers for legacy systems, but maybe the questioner has something else in mind.
Jamal O'Reilly with War Electronics. My question is that if you could give some few words as a consumer, why would I support such a system? You know, and how the free market will help push a system when the demand response. The utilities can save quite a bit of money, and it might be a good idea to have some sort of a contract where the consumer can benefit in the profits or the savings that are gained from such a system. If it's possible that the customer and the utility might want to have a contract to implement such a system, just like the one that is already in existence, that is not a demand response, but it's an on and off switch type. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we have a structure today with our regulated utilities that it's possible to design those contracts, those tariffs, those agreements, such that the savings are passed on to customers. That's what the Public Utilities Commission is supposed to ensure. So I don't see that as a problem. With respect to competition, yes, it's better if we can move step-by-step parts of the system over to competition so that we don't need the heavy or light hand of regulation to ensure that the savings get passed on to customers, but customers reach those agreements with a variety of suppliers that are competing to provide the services they want at the best possible price. Did I respond to your question, or is there more to it?
Is there an example where it's taking place in the sense of demand response and load control, opposed to the old system where it's on and off and you get paid $25 or whatever it is to turn the conditioning off?
Right. Well, you're mentioning two other approaches to this. One is direct load control, where, for example, a utility may you sign a contract with the utility, and when you're short on power, they can turn off or cycle your air conditioning. Your temperature may go up a little. That's called direct load control, and you get a payment for signing up for that program. The other one is demand response, where you get paid to reduce your consumption of power less than what you bought. The problem with that is it's a mess. So think about going to the store and buying tomatoes, okay? And one day you always buy a pound of tomatoes a week. It costs you a few bucks. You come to the store and they say the California Tomato Commission just said there's a crisis, and they're doing a demand response event for tomatoes, and they're going to buy back the tomatoes you would have purchased at $100 a pound, so that others can use the limited supply tomatoes. So he asks you, how many tomatoes are you going to buy today? How many were you going to buy? I was going to buy 10 pounds, so they pay $1,000 for the tomatoes you hadn't bought yet. That's how demand response works, because unless you purchase the power, you can't buy something back. And the prices we have, these flat prices, okay, essentially you get to buy any amount you want at that price. It's an unlimited option. Okay, so the whole system for demand response is basically bankrupt. They try and get around it with special special rules and estimates and all that sort of thing. But it's a poor way of doing it. They wouldn't do it if they had thought politically they could fix the rates in the first place and have the kind of rates we're talking about here. Then you wouldn't need those demand response rules. Sorry to the demand response providers, but they'd be better off in some world too.
Hey, Tony Mazie of the Public Utilities Commission. I have two questions that I think actually may be two sides of the same question. One, do you see a day when with smart meters we get sufficient granularity and data processing capacity that rate design becomes unnecessary, that you can literally have real-time rate design sorting out supply and demand? And two, along with that, do you see a time when instead of a $400 million box up in Folsom, the ISO, we have $400 million $1 boxes everywhere?
Well, at the risk of upsetting the people, I think the answer is yes to both, although it probably won't happen in my lifetime. So I'm safe there. But yes, decentralizing the price ought to be determined by the marginal incremental cost of providing the services. It also ought to be determined by the scarcity of some of the services that aren't energy services, the same way we determine the price of parking meters in San Francisco, the parking spot in San Francisco. The parking spot in San Francisco is the same cost to the city, whether it's used or not. But if too many people want it, and they're willing to pay a little more, okay, we can make sure there's always a parking space for anybody that really needs it. And we can do the same thing with electric grid. The price ought to be set based on the scarcity and the willingness of people to pay, not the cost of providing the service. And that can be done through either through competitive markets or through algorithms and systems that simulate those markets. When it comes to the central dispatch of power, like the California ISO, we're going to be far better when we reach the day when we have microgrids on this campus, and microgrids connected to other microgrids, Silicon Valley, and each of them is independently operated, and they're interacting with other microgrids all over the West Coast. And then when there's a problem with the transmission line going down, or a tsunami, or whatever it is, all of those microgrids can provide us with the basic functions we need to operate, instead of relying on long-distance transmission lines and central operators, where that central operator might throw the wrong switch and the whole West Coast blacks out. And so, yes, it's a decentralized, many independent operations, mostly automated, be far superior to the system we have right now. Now, I'm not trying to blame the existing system, because we came from an era where we didn't have information technology. And we wanted to build large nuclear plants and large coal plants. And large scale seemed to matter. So we built these large centrally operated systems. But now, small is beautiful. Look out in that parking lot. And we can't go all that way very quickly, but having local generation, local sources, and local control will be a much more robust and resilient system than the system we have today. So it won't happen in my lifetime, but it's the direction I think to strive for.
All right, let's have a round of applause for Ed Cazalet. Now we're going to see a couple of cases, and this is for the purpose of the people on the internet. So I'm going to show the people that are going to be on the panel, starting with Ed Cazalet. And then we will have Ann Smart. These are all from the internet. I just downloaded them today. I apologize if it's not the best photograph of the individual. And of course, we have Chris Villarreal. I had another one, but I didn't put that one. And then we have Mark Tony. Where's Mark? He's in the back there. Oh, there he is. I have another photograph from like about 20 years ago. You're all smiley face on the internet. We'll have to bring that out one day. And then, of course, we have Jeff Byron from NRG Energy. So that's the team on the panel discussion. We are going to take about 25 minutes to network. We have some vendors who have brought their material. Feel free to discuss with them. There are refreshments in the back. Help yourselves to them. And then at 5:45, we're going to reconvene and we're going to have our panel discussion with the team I've just recognized. So thank you all for participating, and it looks like the sound system has finally worked itself out. So thank you. And we're going to put this recording on pause. For the people on the internet, we're going to be back at 5:45 Pacific. Thank you all.
Hey, Jack, nice seeing you. Are you going to be any easier to track down now that you're back in the private?
No, you're fine.
Thank you for staying for the next part of the session today. I believe the sound is still a little on the high side because I'm seeing it's on the verge of going to the unstable side. So if you could just bring it down just a tad on the master volume there. Great. Okay, much better. Thank you. All right, so in the second part of the seminar, we're going to have a panel discussion in which we're going to have our keynote speaker become one of the panelists. And we have with us 4 additional people who are working very hard in this field from different perspectives. And they are part of different stakeholder groups. And it is really important to have a healthy dialogue as opposed to a discussion. And I'll tell you a little bit about the difference between a dialogue and a discussion. So the word discussion comes from the same root as the word percussion. So it's literally the banging of ideas back and forth until one wins, much like the way a tambourine or a drum vibrates. A dialogue is more what, as the Greeks would say, dialogos, which means a flow of ideas. And so the purpose of a dialogue is that when you hear the input from another person, it should help modify your views on things, so that when you respond, you've already taken in what they have said and given it your flavor, and it goes back to them, and then it modifies their thinking, and eventually you come to a convergence. And the only sign of a real dialogue that I have seen in Western cultures is not in Western cultures, but actually in the Native American culture, in how the elders would get together and literally have a dialogue on what would be the best way to solve a problem. So there's a lot we can learn from these old civilizations as we get into this modern smart grid world, because we do have very different perspectives. And I've had the luxury of traveling a lot of places and being in different stakeholder groups to see the need for this dialogue, because we can remain in our silos and think that we are doing something really great, but if other people don't buy into it, then eventually we will not have the mass mobilization that we need in this business in order to help the prosperity of our nation, as well as be competitive with other nations around the world. So that's another purpose. In addition to education in this seminar, it's also the dialogue, so that we can learn from each other and we can have our views challenged in a healthy environment. So with that, I would first like Ed to come back on the panel here and have a seat here. Ed, as you know, belongs to the Gaslit group. He's been an industry expert for many, many years. The flyer that I sent out has a little bit of a background of Ed, and we're really privileged to have him here and share his wisdom with us. The next person I'd like to invite is Ann Smart. He's the Director of Energy at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and Ann very graciously accepted our invitation on recommendation of Ed, so thank you, Ed. There was another recommendation by Ed, and that was of Jeff Byron. So Jeff, if you could come up. Jeff is, I checked his position, he's VP of Integrated Solutions at NRG Energy. So we're going to ask him what that means. And then from the organization TURN, which is the Utility Reform Network, we have Mark Toney, Dr. Mark Toney. He is the executive director there. And this is the organization that tries to represent the consumer perspective on things. And so they do a lot of focus groups and discussions with the population now to see what their concerns are. And last but not least, we have Chris Villarreal. Chris is a regulatory analyst on the policy side of California Public Utility Commission. And as you can see from their faces, these are very familiar faces in this dialogue, and they have been part of many, many forums, and I've had the privilege of being part of many of those panels and heard them speak very intelligently about these concepts that were shared today in the keynote and then the discussion that follows. So the way we're going to run this is we'll start as if it was an interview amongst the panelists first. So we want to see how each of the speakers here on the panel can address the questions of the other panelists. And then we're going to also have a debate with the audience. So there will be a considerable amount of time available in which each one of these panelists will be able to interact. But before we get into that, we want to have some substance from them so that we can then argue their case. So what I'll do is I'll recognize each panelist, and if you can take 5 minutes to make your case. I think, Ed, you pretty much said what you needed to say. And you have some slides. And I believe the rest of the speakers are just going to make off-the-cuff remarks. You have some notes and things. I didn't get any other presentations, so I guess that's the way we're going to go. So what I'll do is I'll start with Ann, because Ann has a PowerPoint presentation. And if you can, I'll bring it up in just a moment. Here we go. So, yes, you're more than welcome to use this microphone, or you can just, either way.
Hi, everyone. I am Ann. I'm the Director of Energy at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. We're a business trade organization based in Silicon Valley, founded by David Packard of Hewlett-Packard in the late 70s. We were founded as a manufacturing group. Our purpose was to provide policy advocacy for the tech community. Since then, we've really evolved, and smart grid has become one of our primary industries. So I want to get everyone started. How many people here, raise your hand, hate getting up in the morning? Keep your hands up. How many of you have a smartphone or an iPad? Awesome. What if you could use your smartphone or your iPad to turn off your heat in your home while you're sitting in bed all cold? What if you could turn off your lights from your iPad or your iPhone? What if you could already do that? One of the great things about smart grid is that in the near future, we'll be able to use these modern technologies to really advance our use of electricity and make it a whole lot easier on ourselves. So in my brief 5 minutes, I just want to touch on what smart grid is as an industry from our industry group perspective, talk a little bit about smart grid jobs in this space, and then just touch on smart meters and other technologies. slide up there, not so that you can try to read all of the small little white words, but to show that smart grid really, from an industry perspective, is a giant ecosystem. When we define smart grid within industry clusters as a leadership group, we tend to say that it's any green technology, it's utilities, it's anyone that does an energy efficiency program, energy management system, lighting companies. It's really anyone that touches the energy space. We're also finding more and more that IT companies are getting involved. What we found in a lot of our smart grid research is that more and more your big tech companies, your Silicon Valley leaders like Cisco and Oracle and Google, are now trying to get into the smart grid space, applying their existing technologies, their existing infrastructure to new products. Obviously, energy management systems has been a big growth. HP has one, Cisco has one. Google had a power meter. I think they've kind of gotten out of this space. But more and more we're finding that smart grid really is an industry cluster that expands across all of Silicon Valley. I don't have a Mac, sorry. Now I'll tell you a little bit about job growth in this space. Last year, the leadership group with City of San Jose and PG&E put out a report on job growth in the smart grid sector. And once again, we define smart grid as across all sectors, including IT and green technologies. We tracked the data from 1995 upwards to 2009, and we found that in 2009 there were more than 12,500 jobs defined as smart grid sector. You can also see from the slide that distributed generation plays a large part in this sector. Here in Silicon Valley and across California, we have great regulations and policies that have really promoted renewable energy. We have fuel cell growth here, even some wind in other parts of the valley. This slide also shows you a little bit more across the supply chain. As I said, we define smart grid as power management, energy efficiency, transmission, energy storage, and then distributed generation. The blue is manufacturing, so you can obviously see that that is a large base of our employment here in Silicon Valley. But it's also good to point out that research and development still is a driving force here in the Bay Area, and that even if you don't have an engineering degree, there is jobs around services. When you have smart grid technologies, there's a communication aspect. We all know that one of the issues that PG&E had with deploying their smart meters was the customer service aspect. They needed more people to be able to explain to customers, this is what the information says, and this is why your bill is looking the way it is. So obviously, we're looking at a dynamic infrastructure of jobs here that really span across all types of industries. This is just a long list of member companies of mine that we consider smart grid companies. You can see that this really ranges from Accenture, which is providing support services to different companies, to Energy, and to like Scion and Sun Edison and SunPower that are more on the solar side. We estimate that of our 365 member companies, about 20% or more are in the smart grid sector. So the number that the industry seems to be using is that by the end of 2012, we'll find 55 million smart meters deployed across the country. Now, for anyone that's in the sector, you know that smart meters are really just the first step in the smart grid development. For us, we see smart meters as really a link to other technologies that could expand the grid. One of the things I've worked on in the past year or so has been helping educate both our large end users and small and medium businesses on how to use their smart meters. We provide some sort of customer service aspect in our partnership with PG&E. This is just a slide that shows what the snapshot is from the PG&E website on what they tell their customers the benefits of smart meters are. I think it's interesting to show that there's both the benefits to utility on increased reliability, but also the benefits to the customer on being able to track your energy use. Now, as you know, tracking your energy use with a smart meter really means that you have a graph that shows you, here's the amount of energy you used at what time, and here's how expensive it was. And there's only so much value you can bring to a customer when you're just showing how much energy you use, particularly if the people that are looking at that graph are the people that already care about their energy use. They're probably more likely to already be saving energy. So late last year, I was in D.C., and we were meeting with some White House administration folks, and the U.S. CTO came up to me and said, I have this great idea, and we could use some help deploying it. Anish Chopra said, he'd like to set up a green button, some sort of application for utilities to put on their website that allowed customers to download the data and then provide it to third parties that could use it for applications on your on your iPad or your iPhone, or beyond that, programming your thermostat or appliances. So we launched the green button in January of this year. All three of the utilities had committed to launching it. I believe at least two, if not SoCal Edison, I think finally did launch it. So all three in California have launched it. The White House will be making a major announcement on Thursday about a few other states that have launched it as of this week. So look for that announcement. But one of the great things about the green button was that you could use that XML file that you can get right from your My Energy page on PG&E, and then apply to applications like this. So this is actually from MacArthur genius Swastik Patel at University of Washington. He uploaded information to an app that actually tracks all of your information. So he has a plug sensor, obviously, and tracked it for your refrigerator, for your appliances, and use that XML file to link up your data. And the hope is that more and more companies will find ways to utilize that information. We also found that we have existing tech appliances that are becoming more and more smart. So a former Apple executive has launched Nest, which is a pretty thermostat. One of the great things about this type of technology is that it's really adapting more towards usage. So for smart grid, it's great if you can track all of your energy usage. But once again, you're just reaching those people that want to know that. It's not necessarily reaching the people that weren't already reacting to their energy information. And so having a thermostat that can set itself or react to you being an occupant in the building, that's really taking smart grid to the next level. Really having all this automated so that you don't even have to think about it. Another thing that we found, the leadership group recently got a bunch of Toyota's plug-in Priuses as a demonstration project. Here in California, we don't have a vehicle-to-grid policy, but perhaps in the future we will use our EVs as a storage device. And having smart meters or meter applications to track how much energy you're storing in your vehicle, what time of use you're using it. When you're going to 7-Eleven, you could get charged directly to your own personal account. There are so many ways with this new and growing technology that we can apply smart grid directly to something that people are already looking to buy. So what will the future look like? As I said, from an industry perspective, we're finding more and more of our companies are interested in this space and spending more and more time looking at regulations with the CPUC and tracking it for our members and policies. And I think we'll see a major growth in hopefully automizing the system. So if you live outside of Palo Alto, I encourage you to look at your My Energy use, download your information with your green button, and then track what time you're using it and see if there might be some changes you can make. But then tell your kids that maybe a few years from now, you won't even have to think about it. All your appliances will just go.
Okay. Now I'm going to invite Jeff to make a few comments for the panel.
Thanks, Erfan. I'd be glad to. First, I have to adjust my Nest thermostat at home. Absolutely. I'm also comparing it to an Ecobee. That was very good, and I was. There's no way that I could put together the kind of information that Ann did just with regard to the number of companies that are in this space, and it is really kind of extraordinary, and I'm so glad to see it happening. I did jot down a few notes, but I think it was more geared towards a different kind of audience than I expected here tonight. How many of you are in this industry one way or another? How many of you are not? That you're more, consumers. Please don't be. I'm glad you're here. Very good. Of course, we're all consumers. Yes, but some of us are more policy wonky than others, and so I'm really pleased to be included on this panel tonight because I think it's an interesting cross-section that you have here. You really do have a good cross-section of folks. I'm a former regulator. Chris was kind enough to refer to me as commissioner, but I only make my kids do that now, Chris. The definition of a smart smart meter or smart grid is really difficult to put our arms around. I thought Dr. Cazalet did an excellent job of trying to explain to us really from the beginning all the way through in some really complicated issues in a very short period of time. And I find that the smart grid or I often refer to it as the smart meter, but that's really because I like to concentrate on the customer aspect of all of this. Means different things to different people. Of course, the investor-owned utility is not really represented here today, I don't think. But they're the ones that, of course, have put that smart meter that Ed showed us on the back of our homes. I'm sorry, there are a few members here of our local utility. But they're the ones that put that meter on the back of our home, and to them, it's a way to basically tell whether or not your power's on. They can actually turn your power off if they so desire, and it gives them those meter readings that they're looking for in order to bill you without having to someone walk around. You might say it serves their purposes pretty well. And of course, to other businesses, the smart grid might be a way to sell you stuff. It might be another platform, like Facebook is a platform that's going to try and obviously sell us things, besides being just a social network. But to innovative companies like the ones Ms. Smart put up, I think it also means new services and new offerings, choices that customers may not currently have, such as the Nest or the Ecobee. But there's some other possibilities that we may get into here today, and Dr. Caslett referred to them as well. So I got a few questions I'd like to ask. How many of you out there think maybe you pay too much for electricity? Now think of yourselves all as consumers here. I mean, Jack, even you know everything about electricity. Do you think you pay too much for what you get? No. Was your answer no? See, but there are a few hands that went up. There are some folks. Does anyone here want to reduce the amount of money they spend for electricity? It's interesting. That's good. I think that's probably true with most everyone. I guess, let me ask this one. Is there anyone here thinks that there are things that they could do to reduce their energy costs that they could do? Because, we're picking on a lot of the the rate makers. So I saw a spattering of hands go up, that there were things that you all think you can do. Is anyone here interested in reducing their personal greenhouse gas footprint? Very good. A lot of folks' hands. So let me ask you this real quick. I'm going to give you 3 things to choose from on a comparable basis. Which one's going to reduce greenhouse gases the most, okay? And just raise your hand up if you think this is, I'll go through them twice so you can go. One would be buying a hybrid electric vehicle, replacing most all the light bulbs in your house with compact fluorescents, or putting photovoltaics on your roof. So let me ask you again. Put your hand up when you think I've hit the one that is the mark for you. Reducing greenhouse gases the most. Something you could do. Buying a hybrid electric vehicle. Electric car even more. Change out the light bulbs in your house to compact fluorescents. Almost as many. How about putting photovoltaics on the roof? And almost as many. There's a lot of variables in there. Let me give you the answer real quick. An analysis that I had done was that those are all very comparable, but obviously one of them costs a great deal less, and that's changing out the light bulbs in your house. How many of you here have heard of Energy Upgrade California? Any of our residential consumers here, have they heard of that? Well, that's really unfortunate because this is an important program that we've put forward in the last 3 years in the state with regard to home energy audits and the efficiency of saving money without all the discussions we're talking about here today with regard to smart grid and smart meters. Let me ask, how many of you put photovoltaics on your roof? None. How many of you own a hybrid or electric vehicle? We have a lot of those. Good. So, and how many of you changed out all the light bulbs to compact fluorescents and LEDs? Oh, you all know now. That's the right answer. So, I guess what I'm trying to communicate to you here is this is a really good discussion, and I'm going to jump right to what I think are the essential elements that we need as policymakers to really help implement the smart grid and to make these opportunities available to consumers. But before I do that, I just wanted to emphasize by the nature of my questions that, you know, the cheapest energy you could possibly buy is the energy you don't use. And if you're not taking advantage of some of these programs that are available to you now that help educate you as consumers, when I left the Energy Commission, I thought, oh boy, I helped approve this Energy Upgrade California program. I better try it. I live about 3 miles south of here. I thought, my house is in good shape. I learned an enormous amount. My ductwork leaked like a sieve. My house was under-insulated. There were issues. I had gas leaks in my house I was not aware of. My point is that right now the programs are available to help you save money regardless of what the rate structures are. And I hope that you'll take advantage of these programs. And we have failed as state regulators to inform you of this, but it's very difficult, I think, as you can tell, in our current budget situation to do that. So remember, the most important thing you can do is to not use as much energy all the time. Okay, but let's say you do all those things. We still want to see the advantages of the smart grid come to the consumer. I used to chair an R&D committee that handled the transmission and distribution issues around smart grid, and that's much more complicated and easier to do in some ways. But now we need to open the gateway up for consumers to get access to the companies that Ann was talking about and the technologies that they have to offer. And so I'm going to offer up that there's 3 things that policy makers need to address. And these are not difficult to do. And I'm not saying these are not underway. They are. And maybe Chris will speak to some of this. First, we've got to get information into the hands of customers. It's amazing that you and I have no idea what we use in terms of our energy use until we get the bill at the end of the month. Can you imagine going into Target to buy something and they say, well, just take it home with you, we'll send you the bill later, and you have no idea what it costs. And that data just can't, well, okay, so, well, let me ask this question. Maybe Ed knows. 15-minute interval data. Does anybody in this room know where that came from? Are you a regulator? I mean, this is because that was a standard 80, 100 years ago. Well, it doesn't go back that far, but that we would do this averaging over 15 minutes. Consumers need to know, and we are certainly able to provide them with real-time information, ongoing. I mean, enough said about that. The second thing we need, besides getting information to customers, is we need to standardize the form of that energy, and we need to address their concerns about privacy. I put that all in one bucket because I think it's been made out to be much more complicated than it really is. But if we standardize this form of information such that the companies that Ann was discussing can easily access it and utilize it, you will see enormous new opportunities coming customers' directions. I truly believe that. But privacy also has to be addressed. Customers are very concerned about that. And finally, and I think this is really said a different way, but it's very similar to what Ed's comments were in his paper. I refer to it as dynamic pricing. We've got to break this stranglehold that the legislature has imposed upon us, and I don't want anybody here to be naive about where legislation comes from. It comes from the people that donate the most money, the legislators. And there are powerful forces, and there are not so powerful forces, but important forces that do have an enormous effect on all of these things. And of course, I was referring to investor-owned utilities in terms of powerful forces. We need to make sure that we break that stranglehold. There's actually legislation in place right now that prohibits us to do dynamic pricing in California, which is an extraordinary thing to me. I think I'll stop with that. I've talked long enough, but but I would end with this. If we do all these three things well, I believe consumers will begin to really see the benefits of the smart grid. Now to Mr. Tomei. Dr. Tomei.
I appreciate being invited to this panel. I'm Mark Toney, Executive Director of TURN, the Utility Reform Network. Our job is to fight for the cleanest, safest, most reliable energy at the lowest prices to customers. As we like to say, we want the most green for the least green. Now, the strengths of smart grid technology from our standpoint are really based on large system-wide improvements in managing electricity distribution. The voltage regulator technology that reduces the voltage running through the lines, the technology that compensates for the intermittent wind and solar generation in real time to let the other plants come on and off. Demand response programs for industrial and large commercial we're very supportive of, mostly because they have they have on-site energy management professionals on staff, or they sign up with these large demand response aggregators. And there are economies of scale that we think make it worthwhile. But when you're talking about small residential customers who lack energy professional staffing or economies of scale, that's where we have a problem with the value of smart meters and particularly the demand response programs. You know, from our standpoint, the poverty of smart meters is that for utilities, the benefits are really immediate. Okay, they immediately experience labor savings through laying off their meter readers. They immediately start earning a rate of return on their capital investment. And it gives the utilities opportunity to exercise a lot more control over customers in terms of time-based rates, prepaid service, remote cutoff. It at least gives the possibility for that. And for customers, so many of these smart meter benefits are off in the future somewhere. Okay, the technology for the real-time usage and these smart appliances we keep hearing about are somewhere on the horizon. It's very easy to quantify the $5 billion that the PUC has authorized to be spent on smart meters for the investor-owned utilities in California. It's very difficult to be able to quantify the ratepayer savings, what value we're getting for the $5 billion. Now, the challenges of time-based pricing, which utility industry will call dynamic pricing, rest upon the theory that residential customers will shift their energy use to nighttime hours. Now, there are three different types. You have, the time of use pricing is often, I call daytime pricing, which is simply higher rates during the daytime than nighttime. We have heat wave pricing that they also call critical peak pricing, where they want to charge astronomically high peak pricing during the 10 to 12 hottest days of the year, or roller coaster pricing, which is charging consumers the hourly spot market rates. Now, all of these are based on a theory, and the theory is the rational actor theory, that people will act in their own individual economic self-interest, that people do a calculus on a regular basis as they make decisions. And in order to respond to these changing electricity prices, okay, people need math and English language skills, computer equipment, and the time to even calculate their self-interest. It's my argument that actually, even when people know what their economic self-interest is, we don't always act in that manner. And I use as evidence the fact that so many people are broke, living in debt, living from paycheck to paycheck. Okay? Maybe you all are a lot more rational than me, but I know that I don't make every decision for spending my money based on what's economically beneficial to myself. Daytime pricing, okay, which is one of the proposals now before the PUC, it does benefit folks who are at work during the day or, you know, who aren't using electricity, but it really does hurt seniors on fixed incomes, families with small children, and others who are at home during the day and need to use electricity during the day. I use as an example the success of curbside recycling programs as an example of a program that has been very successful at changing, modifying social behavior without using price signals, without putting people in jail and criminalizing behavior, okay? But they did it through making it easy for people, color-coded bins. I remember when they first had curbside recycling in my neighborhood, they did it every other week. And I, for the life of me, couldn't remember which week was recycling and which week wasn't, and was only half-hearted. And I think my neighbors were only half-hearted. And when they switched it to every week, it became very easy. I put it out when I put out the trash, because I sure as hell am putting my trash out every week, okay? And it just made it easy to go ahead and put my recycling out at the same time. All my neighbors are doing it, peer pressure, civic responsibility, all that good stuff, okay? So I do think that it's possible to impact people's behavior. I think price signals is the wrong way to do it. Heat wave pricing, we think, represents a true threat to people's health, particularly elderly. The fact is that heat waves in the U.S. result in more deaths than all natural disasters combined. I'm not going to go through the numbers here. I have it here. But over and over again, the studies have shown in Chicago, in the 2006 Southern California heat wave, that hundreds of people died, many of them who shut off their air conditioners and fans because they thought they could not afford to pay for the electricity. Our concern is that if you tell people that your electricity will cost triple or quadruple during heat waves, more people are going to endanger themselves. We don't think it's worth the price. What we want to see to shift peak use, because we agree with the policy goal of shifting peak use. There's no reason that consumers or anybody should pay for peaker plants that are only running 150 hours out of the whole year. None of us want to pay for that. So we agree with the policy goal of how do we shift peak. But we support programs, direct load management programs like the air conditioning cycling programs, where people can sign up for an incentive and have a remote put on their central air conditioning system where the utility can send a signal to cycle the air conditioner off for 15 minutes out of every hour during peak times. It gives instantaneous load reduction. We think it's a lot more cost effective. We support a lot of the stuff that Jeff talked about how to help people reduce using energy in the first place through HVAC standards and upgrades, and in fact, appliance standards in general, geothermal heat pumps in the construction of homes. We like Al Rosenthal's white roof proposals, clotheslines. You know, over 5,000 homeowner associations in California ban the use of clotheslines. We actually have a bill on that would prevent them from banning it. I mean, there are things like that. We believe in power strips as a low-cost way to reduce vampire energy use as we talk about it. Our basic recommendation for moving forward with any type of time-based pricing is to slow down. So much of the technology is not ready for prime time. One of the promises of smart meter technology was the ability for customers to see their energy use in real time. Jeff just talked about that, in real time. But the Zigbee chips that are in the meters that would provide that real time, if you went out and bought a monitor to be able to get the signal, you wouldn't get it because they have not been deployed yet, okay? If you are a solar net metering customer, they haven't quite figured out how to make the smart meters work to run backwards to give you credit. This is not ready for prime time. California does not always need to be first when the technology is not ready. We have no objection to voluntary daytime and heat wave pricing. In fact, many of those tariffs exist now, and you can sign up for them. They're not well marketed. We don't have a problem with peak time rebates because it's a carrot approach and not a stick approach. People get incentives if they participate but are not penalized for not doing so. We want to see the testing of other approaches to impact people's behavior, such as the O-Power pilots, which are sending people comparisons of how much energy their neighbors' homes in a comparable square footage are using, and the Efficiency 2.0 pilots that are giving people rewards and discounts for stores and things they buy for participating in energy efficiency programs. And we want to see more research on how these pricing differentials will really impact seniors, high users, and low users. Yes, we've seen them and how they impact low-income customers, but we have not seen on how they would impact other populations. So our main point as a consumer organization is to slow down the adoption of dynamic pricing. I do take a lot of credit for the legislature adopting those protections in the legislation that Jeff talked about. We're very proud of that, and we will continue fighting for, at the PUC and at the legislature, not to permit mandatory dynamic pricing in which people are automatically put on it and then have to opt out. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Chris Villarreal from the California Public Utility Commission. Chris?
So, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow any of the things that you've heard so far today. So the first thing I want to say is, much like, well, first of all, whatever I say are my own opinions and not those of the commission, which may be important as I continue my little spiel here. Much like Jeff Byron asked, how many people in here are aware of dynamic pricing tariffs? Yeah. How many people are actually on a dynamic, or first, how many people have swimming pools? How many people are actually on a time of use rate? That'd be me as well. So, much like Jeff Byron and Mark was saying, there are things out there that customers can already do today. The first easy one, I have a swimming pool. I went ahead and set my timer to run in the middle of the night, and then I went on a TOU rate. Great, now I am a free rider. But the important part about smart grid is that we're changing not only the role of the utility, but the way the customer interacts with the utility and with something that they've never known existed before, and that's called the grid. The PUC opened up our smart grid rulemaking in 2008. Smart grid started well before 2008. Smart grid has been rolled out for 10, 20 years. None of us know about it. It's all mainly hidden in the transmission grid. But we've been doing things for the past decades to make our grid smarter. All of that impacts the way the utility interacts. One of the big stories that I think we need to start realizing as we start talking about smart grid is how that fundamentally changes the role of the utility. The utility is no longer just simply the entity out there that you pay your bill to. They're not the ones out there signing contracts to provide you power. The utility is inevitably going to start relying less and less on those contracts and more on what you all do inside your own house, what you do while you're driving, what you do when you get to work. And that is going to be difficult. That change is not going to be easy. The utility is reliant on you paying your bills. My job is reliant on the utility being in business. As the customer starts to change, as information is given to the customer, as the customer is able to gain greater understanding of how they use energy, what steps they can do today and what steps they can do tomorrow to take advantage of these new technologies and new information, to start changing the way they use information, to start getting on different dynamic, get on different dynamic pricing tariffs, that is going to change the way you think about energy. So Jeff Byron had 3 things that he wanted to see be developed to help customers. The first one was provide information to customers and hopefully in real time. The good news is you can do that today. You can go on to, at least in PG&E service territory and the other 3, you can go onto your web page and download all your information in a nice little XML or Excel format. You can even exchange that information with a third party of your own choosing through the green button, as Ann talked about. We are getting to the real-time information. As Mark stated, that the communication standard Zigbee has been delayed, but there is a standard that is out there. It's in use in Texas. It's been in use in Texas for 2.5 years. We have a proceeding right now where we are considering the utilities on how they're going to deploy that. The hope is by the end of this year, you'll be able to go into Best Buy and go and purchase a device on your own that works with the utility meter that you paid for, and be able to get the real-time flow of information so then you can give it to whoever you want to. The second one, standardized format of privacy. Again, we're on that. The utilities earlier this month filed an application saying, here is a standard that we think is useful to customers and to the industry. It's standardized. Everyone agrees to it. It's in the new NIST catalog of standards, and we want to use this. The commission wants this to go forward because, again, we want to give the information and the power to the customer. He talked about privacy. Many of you may know that last July the commission issued a decision that set out the privacy requirements that the utility must meet, as well as any third parties under contract with the utility. So you have, with certain exceptions, you have the power to choose who to give your information to. And then the third one, of course, is dynamic pricing. And, the commission, as well as the CEC and the ISO, have an energy action plan. That energy action plan has been updated twice. The first one and the second one say the same thing, that it is in the interest of the customers of the state of California to move forward on dynamic pricing. Since 2001, however, during the energy crisis, there's been legislation limiting our ability to do dynamic pricing. So the concept of dynamic pricing is not new. It's not something that we've designed over the last 5 years. It's something that has been considered for well over a decade in the state of California. Other states are moving towards dynamic pricing, of course. So what is available today? Again, we have the green button. What are we expecting over the next year or two? There are already, at least in the state of Texas, applications put out by third parties. ADT, the security company, is already under contract in the state of Texas and is investigating the ability to give customers in-home displays as part of their security service. So now we're looking at third parties that you use on a day-to-day basis, ADT, AT&T, who want to offer you a bundle of services. They want to give you an in-home display so they can package that as part of their service. We are working, there is an effort with the appliance manufacturers to develop new appliances that you will be able to go purchase later this year, beginning of next year, that have the capability to respond to an over-the-air price. It could be a retail price, wholesale price, it could be a combination of both. Your appliance will be able to respond to an over-the-air signal, however you want it set, so that you can both save a little bit of money on your rate, as well as provide benefits to the market as a whole. The last thing about smart grid is the one that is most difficult to talk about. Not because it's difficult in and of itself, but it's hard to explain the benefits to customers. It's the infrastructure investment. As California moves forward on distributed generation, and as Governor Brown wants to get 12,000 megawatts of distributed generation, it's going to be difficult to get that new distributed generation to integrate with the grid. So without the information coming off the meter, without the real-time information that the utility is rolling out there, the utility could see a decline in service. If the utility does not know there's three rooftop solar units and 2 EVs, if they don't know that's out there, your transformer and the feeders that lead down to your house may see difficulties in voltage, they may see difficulties in service. Without the meter data, the utility cannot plan. Without the communication network, the utility cannot plan, and the utility cannot keep the level of service. And the last one is, of course, demand response. For a couple of years now, the Commission has been endeavoring to allow for third parties to go out and market directly to you to see if you are willing for a price and for a return to provide demand response to the wholesale market as a whole, to the wholesale market. We've been a little stymied by FERC recently, but that is one of the things that is part of the overall goal of Smart Grid, is to allow the customer to make the decisions whether or not they want to provide services to the utility, or if they would rather take control of their usage themselves and contract with a third party to provide additional service to the wholesale market and make a little bit of money. Now, one of the things I think Ed was getting to in his talk earlier is the rate design does not support any of those choices. If you think those are all good things and you want to take advantage of those, the rate design does not support that. The rate design does not give you an incentive. The rate design does not give you a rate of return. The rate design does not allow you to make money off of your choice. And this whole, from my opinion, the debate around dynamic pricing really gets into that question. Do you want to do something with your electricity? Do you want to do something with your response and be able to make a return off of that? And I probably should start slowing down here before I get too personal on this. So these are the questions that the PUC has been struggling with, much like the CEC. These are the questions that the state of California has been struggling with, as well as nationwide. There's a whole effort nationally to develop standards, develop smart grid policies that will impact everyone sitting here today at some point. So thank you very much, and look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Okay, because we are short on time, I want to get the participants now at this point to come and start asking questions at the microphone. And we will also give the panelists an opportunity to ask each other questions. So are there any questions from the audience or any points that any of the panelists have made that you may have a different perspective, you want to challenge them in any way? This is the opportunity. There will be a test afterwards. Rena, you usually have things to ask. Come on. You can. Oh, there we go.
I'll ask Dr. Tony a question I've been wanting to ask him for quite some time. You said earlier that you were in favor of voluntary dynamic pricing. You also said that you were in part responsible for a bill that passed in the legislature that limited the application of dynamic pricing. As I understand that, that bill prohibits the utilities from implementing dynamic pricing for residential consumers until at least 2016. Can you square those two comments?
It all has to do with what you consider to be voluntary, okay? Right now, people can sign up for voluntary time of use pricing, and we have no problem with that. What we had an objection to was a default time of use pricing in which people opt out. We consider that to be mandatory and not voluntary. We consider voluntary when the customer volunteers proactively, not when they get volunteered. That's the difference.
Chris, do all of the IOUs offer residential time of use rates?
I don't. I'll have to check.
My recollection
PG&E does.
My recollection is PG&E used to, and I decided that working in this industry, I had to eat the dog food. But I thought they discontinued it unless you were still on the rate, and I'm not aware that Edison does.
PG&E, you can still sign up for PG&E Smart Rate, which is a CPP rate.
Okay, thanks.
And that's what I'm on.
Thanks.
Yeah. I don't recall if Edison or San Diego still has it, but I know PG&E definitely does have a CPP rate option for customers.
And for those that aren't familiar with all the three-letter acronyms, that's critical peak pricing.
Other questions? We have another volunteer.
Hi. My name is Jake Wise. I was wondering if someone could speak to the obstacles to getting to one price in the state of California. It seems like the fact that there's a difference between the retail rate and the wholesale price creates a bit of an obstacle to more efficient consumption of electricity.
Well, I think the obstacles are many. It's a lack of understanding. I touched on it in terms of that pie chart in my presentation. We had all the various components of price. And the wholesale price of energy is a small part of what we pay. There are all the other charges. And all of those charges need to be dynamic. In the same way, there's no cost of energy for your parking meter in San Francisco under the new rates. It gets determined by the value people place on those parking spots. So if we have a scarcity of power at any point in time, or scarcity of delivery, that needs to set the price, not the price out of the California ISO wholesale market, which is only about 19% of the cost today.
Other panelists?
If I could say something about the mythology around real-time pricing, you know, there are people who believe that electricity prices should be based on a spot market price for electricity that is constantly changing, or at least at some times during high demand can go up pretty high and can be pretty volatile. But the fact is that the vast majority of electricity purchased by utility companies is contracted for years and years in advance. It's not like the utility companies are buying all the electricity on a minute-by-minute basis here, okay? It's only a small fraction of the energy. And to propose that customers should be charged that tiny, that their entire electricity charge ought to be based upon that small proportion that's bought on the spot market, that's why I don't call it real-time pricing. It's imaginary pricing, okay? And so that's one of the things that we want to challenge in this mythology of real-time pricing.
Well, it might surprise you, Dr. Tony, but I agree with you that the price out of the California ISO market is not a valid price for pricing to retail customers, and that we need two-part pricing, long-term stable price based on these long-term contracts, and that was what these subscriptions were about in my proposal. And then if we get into conditions where we've got too much power on the grid or too little, then parties get to sell their excess or buy more at that price. But they got a base long-term contract that protects them, protects the seniors, protects the poor, protects you against the heat wave pricing, because you've got a base amount of power that's contracted for that is reliable. But still, we have the problems of scarcity when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and we need people to respond quickly. And I think the best way to do that is through incremental charges or rebates on the bill with respect to those base costs of power. That'll have the same effect as the advocates of dynamic pricing suggest, without the risk that Dr. Tony clearly puts forth.
Well, we agree with the concept of peak time rebates, I believe I mentioned. And the reason is because the principle there is that when people voluntarily have a reduction of energy during peak time, there should be a system savings from that. It should cost less. And yes, we think that it is fair then to share those savings with those individuals that participated. That's fine with us. That's a little different from saying when there's a peak crisis, that people should be penalized for using electricity. We do think those are different. So we're willing to consider time differentiated pricing from a consumer standpoint when people sign up for it, or in the instance where people are, the savings are being shared with people and there's no penalty involved. So we're willing to have some flexibility there.
The difference there is I think you got to have both the carrot and the stick.
Exactly.
And the carrot is using less and getting a rebate off of what you've actually pre-purchased. And the stick is if you use more than what you pre-purchased, you pay. Well,
is the consumer smart enough to pre-purchase?
Well, I mean, you can give the consumer a choice if you like, and they can say they can pay this highly volatile real-time rate. It's like being on a variable rate for your mortgage. And some people choose it. Other people want a fixed rate. People are smart enough to figure out which one they want, and they change from time to time based on the markets. So I think it's not that hard for consumers with a little bit of help, and they go to a website and say, okay, rate A, rate B, rate C, which one would have been better for you over the last year? And you say, I'll pick B. That's it.
I think it's important just to address the comparison to Obamacare that dynamic pricing is intended to kill seniors that are in their homes. I think that there are protections in place, and there needs to be a greater discussion on the protections set aside for low-income residents and for seniors. One of the things that PG&E offers is that if you're not on a normal day-to-day schedule, for example, if you're a nurse or someone that works at night, then there are different dynamic pricing structures available. I think that that's an issue separate from the overall discussion on rates impacting us.
Okay. So I can't resist. People put down your cell phones, no tweeting allowed here. My personal viewpoint is that I don't think peak time rebate is a very useful price signal to customers. I think that peak time rebate is inefficient. It does not send an appropriate price signal. It does not send the right signal to customers asking them to conserve. I think it's incredibly unwieldy because you're now requiring the utility to generate a baseline for every single residential customer in their service territory. Because in order to get your rebate, you have to determine how much you would have used but for your response. For those of you who survived the demand response battles around this issue, it's a nightmare. It took the Commission several years to determine what a baseline methodology is going to be. So relying on a utility to administer a peak time rebate where they have to generate, in San Diego's case, 1 million baselines, or just PG&E's 5 million baselines, I think that's fanciful. The second thing is, how many people have ever bought anything on Groupon or Living Social? How many people have bought something off using Groupon or Living Social? Okay, so while we're talking about rate design, the future is in New Zealand. In New Zealand, they have an option for customers to go and use a prepaid program. So they have prepay that is fully rolled out in New Zealand. If you are taking service from a particular service provider, they offer you weekend Groupon rates that come out to your emails every Friday evening if their service provider has an extra supply of electricity that they want to dump because it's a fairly robust wind generation supply in New Zealand. So if they have excess energy under contract, they sell it at a loss on a Friday through a Groupon type service. So what I'm getting at is there are a lot of options that can be made available to customers once we start realizing that the regulations and the policy can enable a lot of this. If we can enable utilities and customers and eventually third parties to provide these innovative technologies, innovative services, the customer may not have to do anything. If you automate everything and allow them to make their one-time choice, it's taken care of.
So perhaps I could clarify. I agree with Chris. And when we were having this discussion with Mark a few minutes ago, he agreed with me on rebates. Well, there are two different kinds of rebates. As Chris just explained, one is a rebate
against, in the case of critical peak pricing, is against a baseline that you haven't purchased. From my discussion of going to the store and getting paid not to buy the tomatoes you're going to buy, that's the problem with that kind of a rebate. But if you have a rebate against a fixed subscription, or you pay extra against a fixed subscription, then all the mechanics of that work very well, and we don't have this problem. It is inherent in critical peak pricing, and I would hope that Turn could, after it studies that, could think that through and be a big supporter of that approach.
Okay. I have a question of the panelists. In my journey to the Far East, looking at countries like Taiwan and Japan and Korea, I found their average to peak load in the high 70s, whereas in the United States it was in the high 50s. And when I asked the question of the people over there, what is it that's so special? You don't really have a smart grid. You don't have all this real-time signals going. So what makes your average to peak so much higher than in the United States? And their answer was very simple, and it goes a long way in the way, Mark, you've been talking about, is that they have educational programs, right from school and public service, advertising on television, and then a time of use rate that actually works, and lots of people are on it. And over time, they've slowly, especially they've educated the housewives who are doing their laundry and other things to move it at other hours in the night. So the question to the panelists is, do you think that there is room in our country to first use some of these more traditional ways before we start relying a lot on technology to do it for us?
I'm going to tell a quick technology story and then answer that. When I was growing up, suitcase companies, luggage companies, were all trying to figure out how to make the luggage lighter and lighter using nylon, using all these space-age technologies. And somebody finally came up with the technology that was the most effective, and it was wheels. They put wheels on luggage. I don't know if you remember that point, when they put wheels on luggage, and how amazing that was when somebody realized that no matter how light you made the luggage, people are always going to stuff with heavy stuff, okay? And that the wheels and now you can't buy luggage without wheels, okay? And I'm just using it as an example of using an old technology in a new way, okay? So innovation can take more than one way. It doesn't require new technology. Now, on the question of my discipline, my background is as a sociologist, my academic background. So in sociology, we look at human behavior and impacting it as very complex. And in fact, that price signals is not what gets people to move, but the sense that people have a civic responsibility. The fact that people want to save the planet for their children, we think is much more a motivating factor than whether you can save $10 one month. That is our belief, and I think our challenge is to figure out how we, working together, can actually motivate people to change their behavior. I'm actually a believer in behavioral change. Okay, not everyone is. I am. I just think that price signals are not the way to be effective. There are more effective ways to do it.
Well, maybe so, but Shannon, did you take a bus here today because the price of gas is a little high? Isn't that what you said earlier today? I mean, the economic price signals is dynamic. It's in our life all the time. You ever think when you go to the grocery store, I mean, I don't take a calculator, I don't take my computer, I don't take my rational actor theory with me, but I do make literally 200 or 300 decisions in a grocery store every day that are economically based decisions. And I think we all do that. Well, maybe not all of us. We are in Los Altos, after all. And we do have Draegers, and we do have those kind of stores here, too. If I could, just because there's not much time left, and I don't know how far Erfan's going to take us, the discussion around all these issues may be a little bit they're right in the breadbasket of most of us here, but for some of us, it's a little bit of it puts us off, I think, because how the complexity of the terminology and the rate structure design that we're discussing here, these are complicated issues, and you really do have the right folks here to be discussing them. But I always like when I talk to consumers to say, think about how complex this discussion is. Is this really necessary? Replace electricity with potato chips and see if this all makes sense to you. Think about that. I mean, all these different mechanisms that we come up with. What is so unique about electricity that we have this enormous complexity? And I would offer that it's two things, and I'm sure this will generate discussion as well. One is that we have a regulated monopoly involved here, and that's very complicated. They have an obligation to serve, and Mr. Villarreal there has an obligation to make sure at his organization that you don't get overcharged for that service. But the other thing, of course, is electricity is sort of unique in that it's used the instant that it's made. But so what? There's plenty of it there. Our utilities make it about 99.7% reliable, which is pretty doggone good. I was going to just offer up back to the original topic of the panel, and that is the role of customers in making smart grid a reality. And I'd offer a very simple answer to that solution, Erfan, and that is your role is just to use it. And our role is to make sure that there's choices around it for you, that there's opportunities that maybe don't exist right now, and get the policy right. And I was really impressed to hear so many of the things that are going on at the PUC to help enable that. We have a long way to go, and there's a lot of discussion to be had here, but I'm not sure you're going to settle that tonight.
That's right. Okay, so we have just crossed our okay. I think that should be better. Yeah, there is a lot of feedback between the microphones. So just some closing comments. What I'd like to do is just give like 30 seconds to each of our panelists if they want to say some final thoughts, and then I have some closing comments for the seminar. So we'll start with Ed, and then we'll just go around.
Well, I'll just thank this panel for tremendous discussion we had. There's a wide range of opinion here, and I think we made a little bit of progress moving forward, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
I think it's just important to note that one of the definitions of smart grid is applying 21st century technologies to 20th century grid. And for my generation and those younger than us, it's that access to wireless technologies, the constant updating, that's really what will drive our decision making. Unfortunately, the Eastern Hemisphere here and the discussion about conservation, I honestly don't know if that's going to be the best driver, but applying these technologies that allow us to track our energy use for the people that are constantly tracking Facebook updates, I really think that this technology will help my generation and above actually save energy.
I think we should just change the name of Smart Grid to Ann's Grid. I don't know if you know her last name is Smart. I'll try this one instead. I will end with this. This industry is old. It's pretty much the same grid that Edison invented a long time ago. This is the biggest breakthrough that it's ever seen, is the opportunity to marry information technology and communications, or the apps, if you will, to the electric power grid. And the only thing that stands in our way is what I refer to as electrotropophobia. And if you'll allow me the license of creating a word, that's the fear of change in the electric power industry.
I think that the most productive policy discussions are ones where we have clarity as to what the goal is. And so I think instead of us arguing over dynamic pricing, good or bad, that we always get further when we say, let us figure out together what are the multiple strategies that we can employ to reduce peak energy use, peak electricity use, and look at the fact that perhaps dynamic pricing plays a role in it, but so does impacting human behavior, so does taking away customer choice, limiting customer choice. I know there's this big thing about customer choice is supposed to be good, but when you're talking about appliance standards, when you're talking about building standards, you're actually reducing customer choice and you're taking away the bad choices from the marketplace. So I think that we're going to get the furthest if we focus from arguing over dynamic pricing to really figuring out how do we reduce peak load.
So my closing comments will be, in the spirit of the debate here, is I agree with Mark. Not every customer is going to respond to price. Each and every one of you have different drivers for why you make your choice. And the point that I think we've all been trying to make here is that, at least from my perspective at least, is that we want to give the customers the option to make their choice. Part of that requires you being an educated and informed consumer. And part of educating and understanding how you use electricity is understanding what electricity is and what that price for that commodity is. I sort of have this view of a commercial, hopefully in the not too distant future. How many people remember the recent Sprint commercials where they follow the lady throughout the day and just smack dab in the middle of the screen is the kilobyte going through the screen as she uses her phone all day long? What I would love to see is having a similar commercial like that from either the utility or from a third party where they're just tracking kilobytes throughout the day as they follow the woman or the man throughout the day to show what everything they're doing contributes to their kilobyte usage. That type of understanding of what a kilobyte is, I think, would really contribute to allowing customers to make their own informed decisions.
All right. So a couple of closing comments. First, I'd like you to show your appreciation to the staff and faculty here at Foothill College. So Robert and others here who are here from Foothill, if you could please stand up. And the media center person. You could have a round of applause for them. Foothill College has provided this room and the refreshments and all this AV setup because they see the value in liaising with the industry and bringing this energy into the campus. So this is not a one-time phenomenon. This will happen on the third Tuesday of every month. So the next one is going to be, I believe, on April the 17th, which will be a Tuesday. So please mark your calendars. Now, the way something like this grows, today, for an inaugural seminar, I would say the turnout was phenomenal. It's the middle of the week. A lot of people are busy doing a lot of things. It will take some time for them to make room in their schedule. And I received many emails with regrets that they would have liked to be here, but they can't because of different reasons. But once this happens on a monthly basis, you can set your calendar with it. It will almost be like brushing your teeth. You know that on the third Tuesday, if you want to learn something about smart energy, clean technology, energy efficiency, and the whole building automation systems, and this space, this thing about trying to make this planet a sustainable planet given the population growth and the increased consumption of energy in a more electrified society. We need to continue having this dialogue. I realize there are many conferences and many workshops that happen once or twice a year, and people have to fly and they have to spend a lot of money attending them. So what I am trying to do through the Smart Grid Educational Series is provide you a low-cost option. It's your time, which is the most precious part of the effort. but your logistical expenses are kept to a minimum. And by having this webinar, and we will work on the sound quality, we'll get it up and running. Eventually, the idea is that no one will be deprived of this information. The webcast recording is going to go up online. People will be able to watch it if they couldn't come to this event. So what I'm asking all of you is, if you want this to become an institution here in the South Bay, I would really recommend that the next time you come, bring a friend or a colleague with you so that these seats fill up. Because as they fill up, they're going to have a momentum of their own. And my purpose here is not commercial, because as Mark says, not everyone is driven by money. In this particular case, I'm definitely not driven by money, but a certain high that I get from seeing intelligent people getting together and dialoguing outside of their normal job function. They come out and they exchange ideas. So what I'd like to recommend to all of you is that go through your Rolodex and think of people in the area that you think could benefit from this and also could contribute, and have them come and participate. You'll keep getting my bulletins about the next event. We'll have speakers, we'll have panelists. That process will go on. If you think you want to be a speaker or you want to be a panelist, I didn't do any special anointing. Notice their scalps are not shining in any way from any oil I put on them. They're all just normal, regular people in the industry who said, no, I want to be a part of this. And one conference call and everybody was ready and excited. So by doing it once, I have proven that it can be done. This is proof of concept. And the next time, it's based on your enthusiasm and energy. And I'm hoping that we would have lit one light today. Tomorrow will be 2, 4, 8. And eventually, people will start covering this. San Jose Mercury News will say, hey, there was a seminar on smart energy at Foothill College. And then I would think that that was a great thing. But you were pioneers today. I mean, Lewis and Clark, I think, are tossing and turning in their graves today. And they're wondering, how come these people are competing with us? Because we are definitely the pioneers today in starting this thing. So a round of applause to all of you for making it here. Thank you to the panelists, to Foothill College, and have a wonderful evening. And thank you to everyone on the internet. This webinar and this seminar is now adjourned.